Hello, and welcome to the webinar. Appreciate you all joining this morning. Listen, I want to just say thank you for picking the time out of your day to join me for this webinar. This is actually my 10th webinar this year. I usually do one once a month. And the purpose of the webinars is really to share experiences that I've had in my career as a leader, but also to inspire other leaders and hopefully create a better workplace for the employees and for the leaders, a place to grow and a place to be vulnerable and a place to do their most outstanding work. So today's webinar is about about culture. It's all about culture and building a culture that drives results. Many of us understand that we're in a new age, right? I mean, look around. The Great Resignation, as they call it, if you haven't heard that term, is something that's very popular in the press right now. And it talks about employees that have gone through the pandemic, really had a chance to evaluate, take stock of their careers, take stock of their lives, try to understand what's important to them. And what's coming back is that they're not entirely satisfied with their organizations that they work for. They're looking for more acknowledgement of the contribution that they're making. They're looking to be, seen and heard in the workplace, and most of all, I think, just showing some respect for what they're doing and the contribution that they're making. So I've heard a recent study that said that 40 million people have quit and moved on to new jobs or are looking for new jobs since the beginning of the pandemic. There are roughly 10 million open jobs in the workforce in the United States at the moment. And many people are really being a little bit more choosy about the types of environments, the types of organizations that they want to work for. I recently had a friend of mine who left her job. She had, I remember back when she took the job, she was very excited about it, thought it was going to create some great opportunities, but soon found out that she was in a toxic work environment and wound up leaving within about a year of joining the company. Fortunately, she's now at a new company and actually thriving there. And I asked her what the biggest difference was, and she had mentioned that the biggest difference was that she really felt as though she was respected and her contribution was valued, and that they were really looking for her to try on new things, perhaps make some mistakes, but learn and grow within the organization. I think that's a tremendous lesson for us. So today is about culture. I'm going to talk to you leaders about how you can build a culture that is vibrant and will help your leaders perform at their best, have your employees perform at their best. And it's really you and your responsibilities as a leader to make this happen, right? It's the leader. If the leaders don't do it, nobody else will. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. We're gonna put up the presentation, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. Okay. So I want to take a moment today to just reflect and to acknowledge a great leader who passed away this week, General Colin Powell. I know many of you probably in my age group, grew up knowing Colin Powell and seeing him in the limelight as either Secretary of State or Joint Chiefs of Staff. But what really grabbed me, and I think has been something for many people, is this idea that we see leaders who seem just have a good core set of values and character about them. And that's one of the things that always grabbed me about General Colin Powell, and many of the leadership quotes that are attributed to him is just simply what a good character he was, what good character he had, and the values and the beliefs and the reference points that he brought to his different roles and why he was so successful. Now, he admits that not every decision that he made or all the things that he's done have been the most positive, but or had great results, which I think is another good characteristic of a leader who is vulnerable and will recognize when they do make mistakes and be able to move on from them. So here, what I picked a quote that I thought was relevant for our discussion today. There are many that Colin Powell had used throughout his leadership, different leadership roles. But in this particular case, trust is the glue that holds people together and is the lubricant that keeps an organization moving forward. I think that's very relevant for our conversation around culture today. So please tip your hat to Colin Powell for being a great leader. Now, many of you probably know who Peter Drucker was. Peter Drucker was known as the founder of modern day management. Famous management guru, if you will. He once said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what Peter Drucker had meant by that was that you can have thought up the most beautiful strategy, well thought out, underpinned with all sorts of facts and data. But if you're trying to implement that strategy in a company whose culture is not vibrant, is not dynamic, it's most likely going to fail, right? The culture and the people who have to implement that strategy will kill that strategy if they're not committed to the mission and to the purpose which is set out in the strategy. So I think that Peter Drucker a long time ago said this, and I think he really got it right, that you as a leader are responsible for developing this culture, helping to implement it, make sure that people are committed to that or understand the vision and the strategy, but also are committed to fulfilling that. So if there's no passion, your company will really struggle to execute on a daily basis and to implement the strategy. So you need to understand as a leader that culture in your company will happen. Whether you do something about it or not, it will happen. So you probably want to get in there and start to steer the ship a little bit and make sure that the culture is what you want it to be, because ultimately culture and leadership are what drives the operating results of a company. And you'll hear me say that a number of times today. So just a little bit of background research that's out there. A good study that was done by Deloitte Human Capital Research, and they usually do quite a bit of good work around leadership and leadership development, employee development. 86% of the folks that are surveyed, the leaders, said the corporate culture was very important to driving operating success, but only 28% reported that they felt that they understood their operating culture very well. Right. And then only 19% or fewer than 19% actually believe that they had the right culture in place to be able to support the operating goals. So this is some striking numbers. If you think, the highs and the lows, right? A majority of leaders believe that it's very important, but very few believe that they have the right culture in place. So you're probably wondering, how could this be, right? Well, these statistics bear out that companies are probably, I would say, complacent, if not apathetic, about their cultures. And I think you probably have seen companies that you've worked with in the past where leaders have a culture. They understand that the culture may not be 100% what they'd like, but they're either afraid to make the changes or they're unwilling to make the changes because they don't see it as an imperative. They don't see that as something that is going to drive an immediate return on investment. And I really, honestly, I think that this is a mistake for many companies. I think that leaders need, that I speak to, recognize the need for improving the culture and the benefits that can be gained. And change starts with, this fundamental recognition, right? That we need to do better. We need to have a better culture. So COVID and the pandemic have really put an accelerator, put the gas pedal to the metal. It really stepped on the accelerator here. We need to do something. If you are concerned about the resignation of some of your top talent and them moving on, now's the time to do something. Don't wait. So it's definitely a must for many, many companies. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a veteran of the management consulting industry. I would say a recovering management consultant. I've got 36 years of experience in management consulting and in industry. And I've really just had the honor and been so grateful to have worked with so many top executives in companies. I've worked most recently with IBM for 18 years. I was a partner and executive in the PricewaterhouseCoopers firm. And before that, I worked for Ernst & Young and started my career at General Dynamics. So having worked with executives at a number of these companies, I've had a number of different leadership roles. A lot of this has been in client-facing roles, meaning that I've been out in the field working with clients. I've worked with over 40 Fortune 500 clients during my career. I've worked with C-level executives down to shop floor leaders. So I think I've seen quite a bit, maybe not all, but I've seen quite a bit of what happens in good leaders and leaders that struggle and how important that is. I've had senior client executive roles, senior client partner roles, industry and service line leadership roles. So I've really been blessed to have had a very successful career. One of the things that I'm really proud of is all of the teams that I've been able to build up and to have high performing for my clients over the years. And there's a lot of hard work involved in that, but it's been very, very rewarding work to bring teams together, find what makes them tick across different cultures, get them to work effectively together to deliver something to clients that brings value to the clients, but also to the teams, and see some of those over time, see some of those leaders grow and progress in their own careers. So this deep success with building teams, developing leaders is something that I'm extremely proud of. I am a master certified leadership coach with ILEC, and well, that's enough about me. Let's move on. Okay, so what is culture? And I mentioned that culture happens in your organization, whether you like it or not. First, it's good to get a good definition of what culture is, right? So it's your organization's culture represents the collective behavior, values, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and behaviors of your individual contributors, but also your leaders, right? So if you think about all of the employees and all of the individuals you bring together, that melting pot of individual contributors, as well as the leadership that helps to steer them on a daily basis, that's what makes up your company culture, right? So there's many factors that go into it. I think it's important that we understand the value of leaders and their leadership style and what it does to a company culture. It's important that those leaders create a vision, a mission, a purpose, and strategies and structure within their organizations that help those employees find their place and to be able to do their best work. Something I talk in my coaching practice about is this wheel of intelligent leadership. And I will tell you that at the center of this, the inner core of the wheel of leadership is this self-concept and the elements of character. That's surrounded by your values, beliefs, and your references. And that drives emotions. It drives your thoughts. It drives the behavioral tendencies that you have as a leader and also as an organization. So the behaviors, the visible outer core, which is in gray here, this is what you see, but it all starts with that inner core, and that's what's driving that's what I really believe is something that the leaders need to be working on when I talk about working on the inner core and steering and providing putting their stamp on the organization. So why is it that culture is important? So studies have shown that your organization's current and future operating success are tied to the health and vibrancy and overall maturity of your culture, right? This is fact. Okay, and regardless of any unique transformation challenge you might have as a company, whether that be a cultural change or implementing a new process or a new IT system, right? Your culture and how strong and vibrant it is will determine if you succeed or fail. There's a statistic out there that I remember following for a number of years because I was a management consultant and I did a lot of change efforts, and that was that 75% of all change efforts fail to meet their objectives. 75%. That's a pretty high number. And I can tell you that this is actually very true. Sometimes this company culture and the leadership around those objectives just were not in sync. And even though I've tried the best I could as a consultant to try to steer those, most of those to success. Not all of those were successful efforts as well. So let's talk a little bit about what I call the 5 cultures of culture, right? Culture in and itself is not a soft element, right? But it does contain what I consider 5 key elements of culture that ultimately support that mission purpose of the company, as well as drives the operating success of the company. And that starts with the can-do or the capability culture, the commitment or the will-do culture, the connectedness or the must-do culture, the individual success culture, as well as the team success culture. All of those support that mission purpose, and the vision for the company, and will ultimately drive the operating results. So I'm going to talk about these in a little bit more detail. Okay, first of all, the capability culture. And as a leader, right, you should be asking these questions to see where the health of your culture and your organization are, right? In which do you create a can-do culture, right? In which people truly believe that they have the skills and the capabilities required to be successful in the organization. I know when we hire people, we typically hire the best talent, but on an ongoing basis, do you provide them and do you do the development around the skills and capabilities to keep them being thriving and being successful, right? Do you equip the leaders and the individual contributors with the skills that increase people's learnings and change agility? Do you have a training program? Do you have skills development? And I'm not talking about a video on your ethics program or a video on how to fill out your HR forms. I'm talking about skills development. So whatever your company is involved in, whether that be leadership skills or technical skills, do you have those types of programs in place? So quote here from Robert Allen, the most important thing is to know that you can do it, right? This optimism, it can be optimism, but it has to be grounded in reality. It has to have a basis that people feel, those questionnaires that you fill out that sometimes say, do you feel that this training program, this piece of information you've gone through, this video has provided you with new skills that help you to do your job better, right? That's what's important when I talk about the can-do. So you have to have that base capability. You have to have the skills in your organization, both hard and soft, that allow you to actually do the job. And you have to have confidence in your ability as an individual to be able to do the job. The second element is this idea of the commitment culture, right? So in this particular case, what the leader needs to be asking is, are the vision, the mission, and the purpose of the organization one that excites and it motivates, and I will even say motivates is probably the wrong word here. I'd like to use the word inspires the leaders and the employees of the company, right? Does it provide them the why? If you're familiar with Simon Sinek, I love Simon. And you have to be able to connect to people's, especially in today's environment, people want to be connected to a mission, a purpose in terms of the work that they're doing. And it could be something that's very localized. It could be something within the organization. It could be the community. It could be a national purpose. But really, is it something that excites people? Are they committed to it? Secondly, are people motivated, passionate, and inspired to do great things for the organization? So it's one thing to say is the mission mission and purpose of the organization inspiring, but it's another to say, hey, are people really committed? Are they going to? I used to use the term, are they going to, go under the bus for you, right? And are you going to see people doing and putting in the effort to go above and beyond for that mission and purpose? Are they committed to it? Another quote here, Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks, one of my favorite leaders, when you are surrounded by people who share a passionate commitment around a common purpose, anything is possible. Isn't that beautiful? It's this idea that you're so passionate about something that no amount of hours is too much. You're willing to go through walls to be able to make things happen. You're committed to it. You have a common purpose that everybody believes in. That's that core of what the culture means, is common commitment. The third element here is the connected culture. And so what you should be asking as a leader is, do the different parts of your organization share the same vision? So you can be one team that has this vision, but is that a common vision across your organization? I used to work for a company that had multiple divisions. It was a big company, 340,000 employees. And it always seemed that within the divisions, there was pretty good cohesion and commitment, but across them, it was almost like sometimes we were competitors. Like we were fighting more against the department and the division next door than you were against a separate company that was perhaps working at a client. So you just have to really make sure that this is something that's shared across and shared, in a common way, in a common thought process. And this sometimes can be difficult for leaders, but make sure that their leaders are properly bringing that message to the employees so that everybody shares the same understanding of the vision, the mission, and the purpose of the organization. Is cooperation and consensus possible within different parts of your organization, right? Are there barriers or obstacles for people working together? Is your remuneration system, is your bonus system something that prevents people from effectively working together? Or are leaders battling it out for that one promotion process? Promotion role, the next COO or next vice president role? Are they competing with each other, and therefore it makes it difficult for the organizations that work for them to work effectively together, right? Are people connected in line with the vision that they feel that they must execute at a high level? So this is partly the commitment, but partly the connectedness to really feel an obligation as an employee that you need to be at your best. You need to be working at the A level. You have to bring your A game to the organization, and you want to bring that A game, but you feel connected to the organization and the people, so that it's you understand that it's an imperative to do that. So this is the connected culture. Stephen Covey once said that interdependent people combine their own efforts with the efforts of others to achieve their greatest success. And I really believe that as a group, as an organization, you are much more powerful. As a team, you're much more powerful than as individuals. So understanding what that connectedness is will drive the most rewarding experience for an organization. So now we move up that pyramid, and we're going to talk a little bit about the individual success culture. So, to what extent does your organization and promote a culture of individual excellence and execution? So again, it comes back to this idea that you're bringing your A game to the organization, and are you rewarded for that, right? Is there an expectation that everybody will bring their A game, right? And if they're not, of course, there's you want to dive in and understand why people are not, because anybody can have a bad day, but you also need to have this expectation, a cultural value that says you bring your A game. And does everybody walk the talk? We've all worked in organizations where people tend to mouth the company mission, purpose, and their value statement, but are they actually doing it? Are they actually in practice, in execution, espousing those values and operating as if those values are real and they're committed to them? Does everybody operate with strong character and values? I know that this is something that probably varies across companies, but a lot of companies these days set out value statements. They set out mission statements, but they also set out what are the values of the organization, so people can connect back to that inner core, right? What's my personal character? What's my personal set of values? And do they align with the organization's set of values? Quote by Confucius, the will to win, the desire to succeed, the urge to reach your full potential, these are the keys that will unlock the door of personal excellence. Right? So it starts to pull it together that if you have that desire to succeed, you're going to bring your A game. You will move past the obstacles. You'll get past your reluctance or your fears, and you'll be able to do your best. And then finally, we have this team success culture, right? And this is very important. I think we see this in many of the top performing companies that are out there. Is there a culture of individual excellence and I'm sorry, pardon me. So is there a team and collective approach to getting things done? When a problem comes up, do you immediately bring your team together to get things done? Do you pull on people from different parts of the organization that might have the right skills, knowledge, the background to be able to attack the problem? Or do you have people individually trying to solve it themselves because they're afraid that somebody else might take the limelight, or they don't maybe necessarily trust the people in the other organization, right? I mentioned before with this trust concept within organizations, there has to be trust between the different organizational organizational groups, but also the individuals to cross over and to pull the right skills and right talent in to solve a problem. Is there real involvement from everyone to help shape the company's mission, purpose, and values? And you've seen this, that sometimes the top leadership will come up with a statement, say, these are our new sets of values. But how often do we try to go to different elements, go all the way down to the shop floor, all the way to the individual contributors and ask them what they believe the mission and purpose should be for the organization, and get their input? This is something that's very important, I think, that employees are looking for today, is they want to feel as though they're contributing to that. The way that they're going to get on board and commit to something is by contributing to the creation of it. So it can't be just one group, the HR group coming up with it, or the leadership of C-level leadership in a retreat somewhere. It has to be something that is ground up and reaches every part of the organization. So Michael Jordan, I think this is great in his career. As you know, he's responsible for a number of wins with the Chicago Bulls when he was a player. And he was a very talented player himself. But I think one of the things that he recognized along the way is that talent may win a game, right, or multiple games, but it's teamwork and intelligence that wins championships. And it's when he started to recognize that he needed to bring his team, other players on the team, up to the levels, maybe not to his level, but to a higher level, to inspire them, to get them to play together. That's when they started to win the championships. And I think this is so true today in organizations. You need the entire team operating at the A level, interacting with each other, building on each other's skills, the strengths of the individuals. That's when you start to win those championships, and that's when you start to beat your competition. Henry Ford, father of the auto industry, right? Coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. All these things point to the same thing, folks. It's about working together as a team effectively, no boundaries there, no friction, right? It's the glue, but also the grease, if you know what I mean. It holds people, it binds them together, but it also provides that lubrication that makes them work together effectively and get to the finish line as quickly as possible. So transforming culture, right? Culture is the number one factor that determines operating success. Culture is that collective, right, of character, values, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and behaviors of the individual contributors, but also the leaders. There are 5 cultures of culture. It's that can do, will do, must do, the individual culture, and the team success culture. The 5 cultures of culture are what I think is the scaffolding, right? The scaffolding, when you put up a new building, you build that scaffolding to build it up. It's that scaffolding for the organization's vision, mission, and purpose. And leaders really need to take 6 critical steps to transform their culture. So this is where it gets real, folks. It's where you as a leader must be involved and must lead. And that's what the first step is, right? We talk about this idea, it starts with the leaders. It will happen, but if you want it to be a dynamic and vibrant culture, you leaders need to be out there, and you need to be out front, and you need to be steering. So it's not about the culture that you want to create, it's the culture that you must create. So if you want something to be different, leadership needs to be involved. I think that this idea, I'm going to go back to something I mentioned around Steve Jobs, and that is that if you want to, something to be different, you need to be thinking bigger and more, thinking differently than how things are today. You need to, you can't be complacent. You need to be disruptive in the organization to push that culture to a new level. And that's what I'm saying is that the leaders must act. So there's just some quotes here. I won't read all of these, but I think it's important that there's so much that's been written around leadership's role in cultural development. Everyone points to the same thing, and that is that leaders must act. They have a duty and a responsibility to develop that culture, to maintain that culture, to ensure that people are adhering to it. And this we'll get to this in just a few minutes, but I do want to say that you have the responsibility to make sure that you're defining it and that you're living it, but you also need to be pushing it even further, and that's in your recruitment cycle and in your promotion and your reward cycle, as well as if you need to have some forced attrition, you'll need to be working on that as well, all in the course of trying to maintain the right culture. Okay, the step 2 out of 6 is around the vulnerability decision. And this is very important. I talk about vulnerability in a lot of my other talks, and it's something that's very popular in management lexicon these days. It's about positive transformation ignites when the ideology of comfort and the tyranny of custom are more painful than the ideology of different. Okay, so in the work that I do, I talk about this decision to be vulnerable. And it's the same thing for culture, right? It's about leaders and individual contributors being willing to admit that everything isn't perfect. I think in a lot of cases, we like to defend the status quo. And that is what I'm saying, is that we need to be bold, be courageous as leaders, and recognize when things can improve, even if it means that we have failed at something as leaders and not from pushing and promoting the right culture. It's okay. It's okay to say that we need to change and that we haven't done as good a job as we would like to do. Starts now, right? Don't wait until you're pushed. Don't wait until 40% of your employees are leaving or your top talent is leaving. Do something now. So the pain, when I talk about this ideology of comfort and the tyranny of custom, right? When it becomes more painful, when you start to see people walking out the door, that's how they vote. They walk out the door. That could be very painful for your organization, especially because the top talent, which is probably the most mobile, are the ones that will leave first. All right. So I talked a little about this this idea about the vulnerability decision. I'm not going to go over this in more detail, but it really talks about the understanding from the mistakes and institutionalize the learnings of the organization can evolve. This requires courage and real leadership to be able to do this. I mentioned before that this idea that you have to be willing to reflect on what could be different. What have you done that probably could have been better, and how are you going to do it differently? So in my practice, when I do cultural transformation retreats with executives, we start with this idea of understanding how dynamic it is and vibrant is their culture across a number of different elements, and then they have to decide. And I lead them through work where they decide what cultural elements that they think are most important to be able to achieve their operating success, and then we build plans in terms of how to move from there. So you confront and you acknowledge those mistakes, and then as a leader, you have to have the humility to go out and to explain to your organizations why things need to change, right? Again, it's just not one of those things that a lot of leaders feel very comfortable coming out and admitting that they, as leaders, have not done as good a job as they could, especially in this idea around culture. But your employees will value it. Okay, so the third step here is about creating a compelling future. So I mentioned you have you assess where you are today, you figure out what's performing well and where is it vibrant and where and mature and where is it not in your culture, and then you build a plan, a blueprint of where you want to go, right? What is the culture that will help you to achieve the operating results that you want to have for your shareholders, for your employees, for yourself as leaders? for your organization, for all of your customers. What is it that you need to be doing? So we help build that blueprint or the architecture for the organization. All right. So everything starts with this compelling vision that the leaders develop together with the individual contributors. That compelling vision then needs to get translated into mindsets. So the leaders need to go out and be communicating this mission, this new vision, and really touching the hearts and the minds of the employees, right? There needs to connect with their why. Once you have those mindsets in place and you start to have a common mindset, you will start to see the behaviors transforming in the organization. People will act differently. They'll act with more humility. They'll act with more trust, right? They'll act with more passion in the organization. And that's when you start to see the cultural transformation. When the behaviors start to turn, then ultimately the culture will change and will start to transform. And you achieve those operating results. You start to see the vision and the mission of the organization being achieved as well. So what do you need to do as a leader, right? You have to map out, what does your organization's culture need to be in the must-have state in order to achieve your objectives, to satisfy your stakeholders, satisfy your employees, satisfy your customers. Right? What are the, one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to lose what's already working that's already good. So you need to have dissect this and try to understand what are the current aspects of the culture that are working well and that you want to sustain, you want to keep, right? And then, developing those values. What are the values that you want to have as your kind of core, from your gut? What are the ones you want to have to live by? Developing the mission, purpose, and mission, purpose, and vision for the organization, which will beget a strategy and then, of course, the structure to be able to maintain that. What roles do you need to have in the organization to be able to sustain that? Because it may mean that you need to have a chief diversity officer. You need to have a chief people. Another common role that's coming up these days is the chief people officer. Right? And what must greatness looks like, right? So help explain this to your employees so that they understand what competencies, what skills, what behaviors they need to be demonstrating in order to achieve the common goal here. All right. So step 4 is about that transforming the mindsets, transforming the behaviors, right? Results transform when culture transforms. Culture transforms when behaviors transform. Behaviors transform when mindsets transform. That's with the message that I mentioned earlier. Leaders must take responsibility for this. This is why it's one of the intelligent leadership laws set out by John Mattone. Very powerful in my mind. Okay, so leaders, what's the roadmap, right? You need to have clear messaging about the strengths and gaps of the organization. Be bold, be courageous, right? Be vulnerable to make sure that you get this out to the employees. Secondly, you need to create that burning platform, that imperative for why you need to transform and why you need to transform now. Now, you may think this is scary, but if you're doing this together with your employees, they'll be wondering why it took you so long. I guarantee you. So creating that imperative, making sure that people understand, because people sometimes resist change or they're not ready for change. They're afraid of change. So you need to create that imperative to make the change. Communicate. You need to be cascading this new message, the new mission, value, and purpose in town halls and in mails and posters and whatever vehicle works best within your company, but it needs to be consistent and it needs to be thought out and it needs to flow throughout the organization, right? One of the things that I would recommend is establishing some focus groups so that you can get people together on a regular basis to see how the messaging is coming through. Is it coming through as intended? So you get these focus groups, you solicit the feedback, you'll hear how the employees, the individual contributors are interpreting the message. If there's something that's not quite coming through for those employees, they'll let you know. Right? They will definitely let you know. So having some focus groups, a real face-to-face, facilitated maybe by somebody within the groups within the organization, so you can get that feedback. And then, of course, making sure that it's not just from the top, right? You want to empower the management and the employees to operationalize, whatever blueprint you come up with, right? Get the folks at all levels involved in rolling out this change. First of all, understanding what the change is, but rolling it out and making sure it's sticky. Okay. Number 5, this is what I mentioned earlier about having the right talent engine. So once you've kind of got that message and you're rolling it out, what you're going to find is that you want to get different people on. You may want to get different people on the bus, right? This is in a Jim Collins mentality from Good to Great. The book that he wrote talked about I want to get the right people on the bus. So what does that mean? So that means in the recruiting process and in the development and the reward system, you're going to want to do something to make sure that the people who are adopting the right mentality, the right mission, purpose, and they've incorporated it and they live it and they're passionate about it, that these are the ones that you're going to want to promote within the organization. And I don't mean just promote as in job promote. I'm talking about people who you want to have, that you want to recognize, and you want to make sure that they feel rewarded and recognized for adopting the change. So it's about talent, and it'll always be about talent. I mentioned that it's leadership and the culture, but talent is the third leg of the stool. Without talent, your culture and your leadership will collapse. So you need to have really good talent in as well. So there are what I call 4 Ds of what they call the talent engines, and that's the first D is around deploying, right? You want to be able to attract, select, and promote leaders and emerging leaders and individual contributors who possess the highest possibility of being successful. And by successful, I mean in fulfilling the mission and purpose and values of the organization. So this may seem odd, but people are not demonstrating that they are committed and passionate individuals to the purpose and values of the organization. You should not be promoting them. So that's where do you put them in the organization? Tough assignments, put them in leadership roles, but also in the hiring process. Make sure you're hiring the right people that are going to be able to fulfill the mission. Diagnose, right? And this is about determining if the individuals and teams are executing what needs to be executed in support of the vision, mission, and purpose. Right? This may seem simple, but how do you diagnose that? How do you evaluate the leaders and make sure on a regular basis that they are doing what you're asking and what you're expecting of them to do, and be able to sort out the individuals who are not getting on the bus, right? So that it's having those measurement processes are very important. Development. This comes down to making sure that you're investing in those individuals, providing them with the resources and tools that they need to be successful, the ones that are operating with the intent and the mission, value, and purpose, helping you to get to your goals. And of course, the demarcation of your employees. Sad to say, maybe not sad to say, but it's just obvious to many that you do not always have all A players in your organization. Right? You can have B players and you can have C players in your organization, and there'll be some need to figure out what you're going to do with some of the lower end C players that are just not quite performing at the level, or maybe not with the right mindset that you're looking for within the organization. But you need to know who your A, B, and C players are, and you need to be making sure that you are rewarding those A players for not only their intellectual contribution, but from the cultural contribution as well. Don't promote bad apples. If somebody gets great results, but they're considered a toxic individual, I mentioned my friend who left because the boss had created a toxic environment, right? I'm sure that the reason why that individual is still there is because they're making their numbers, or there's some operational performance. That's short term, right? Long term, if you have one toxic individual, that individual may find a way to make their numbers for 1 quarter or maybe 2 quarters, but ultimately they will fail, and the rest of the organization that has not been supported, they may wind up leaving, or they will wind up becoming underperforming as well. So these are the deploy, diagnose, develop, and demarcate are the are the critical talent engines that you as a leader need to be ensuring are deployed within your organization. And then, step 6, I love this phrase around that was law number 20 for intelligent leadership. And it said, as in medicine, in a world of corporate reinvention and renewal, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice, right? So make sure you're measuring, do that initial assessment, make sure you understand where you currently are with regard to the vibrancy and the health of your culture before you step into it. And then once you have identified that and you start to implement some of the changes that I recommend, make sure that you're measuring along the way, make sure that your trajectory is in the right direction. So it's just all about measuring. What you measure is what improves. That's another saying that I loved, and as a consultant, I truly believe in. All right, so as a leader, you're asking the question, are we measuring the strength and vibrancy of our talent engines? I mentioned that before. Are we measuring our leading indicators to make sure that we're getting the operational performance that we're looking for? Are we measuring the strength and vibrancy of our culture, right? That's that starting point, but you do that over time to make sure that it's growing and it's getting stronger. And are we focused externally on getting feedback? The groupthink sometimes within management teams is powerful, right? They tend to listen to each other. And if you're not listening to your employees first, but also your customers and your suppliers and your shareholders and people from outside the company to get that feedback in terms of whether or not they see this cultural change taking place. And are we measuring the correct operational metrics? In some cases, we measure some things that are important, but they wind up driving the wrong behaviors internally, right? I think ultimately we need to look past that, those interim performance indicators and make sure that as a whole package, or maybe the ones that are more sustainable down the road, is that something that we can count on as a leadership team? And, are we leveraging all this feedback and demonstrating vulnerability as a leadership team? Right? Are we recognizing that we will not get it right on the first time? We'll have to continue to evolve. We'll have to continue to make changes, and preparing our people for that, making sure that we're telling them, hey, listen, we're in a transformation mode, and we will continue to be in a transformation mode, and we're going to continue to take your feedback, and we're going to continue to evolve. So where does that lead us, right? We talked about the 5 cultures of culture leading to organizational performance. You see along the bottom of this, the jet trails. I like to call this the stealth model because it's got these jet trails of the deploy, diagnose, develop, and demarcate. Those are your talent levers. And then you've got the 6 steps as a leader that you'll take around the outside. This is a model, a good model, strong model for cultural transformation. And this is the model that I take my clients through. Very powerful, very simple, actually, but simple in the concept, maybe more challenging in the actual execution. But I'll leave you with that. So what I provide as a coach and as a business coach, as well as a leadership coach, is several cultural transformation type offerings. One is this cultural transformation readiness assessment. That's really just measuring the health and the vibrancy of your existing culture and whether or not your senior leadership team is effectively recognizing and willing and ready to commit to a cultural change. Right? There's the 5 cultures of culture assessment. This is a deeper one that goes to the broader organization, talks about whether or not the health and vibrancy of the overall organization is where it is today, right? Getting that initial measurement. Typically then I'll do a leadership retreat. Once you've done the first 2 steps, you do a leadership retreat where you'll build up that plan, right? You'll come up with that vision and assess what are the priorities, what are the general themes that are coming out of the survey, and start to develop your vision for the future culture of your company. Many times I'm working with companies on an ongoing basis because it doesn't happen overnight. They need ongoing reinforcement and a sounding board, somebody to keep them accountable for the cultural transformation in their company. And of course, you have A players, right, that are part of that leadership that need development. They need that investment. So the natural component of that is individual leadership coaching for some of the leaders within the organization. Okay. Well, listen, uh, you know, are you, ready to build the culture that you must have as a leader? Right. We've talked about the Great Resignation. We talked about how important culture is. It's make or break, right? I believe that we are at a tipping point for culture in companies and individuals who are committed to those companies and are making changes, making moves, whether they resign or take another job in another company, or they simply move off and start their own business or take a different direction in their life, whatever that may be. As leaders, we need to sustain our organization. So we need to be doing the most we can to be able to attract and retain the talent. And the way to do that is through developing that powerful and high performing culture. Right. So I'm going to leave this with you. Just ask you to consider what we've talked about today as a leader. Happy to have discussion with you if you would like to learn more about what we offer in terms of cultural transformation and what you as a leader can do to be able to improve your culture. Take that first step, be courageous, be vulnerable. Happy to have a conversation. You have some information there on the screen that can lead you to where I am at, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. So thank you so much. I do appreciate your time and attention today. I'm going to take away the screen share, and I'm going to basically put all right. So I'm going to basically just come back to this group and ask if there are any questions that you have with regard to cultural transformation, the leader's role, what you can do, how you can get started. I see a question here, right? If I'm not the overall organizational leader, how do I get this started within my organization? And I would say, go talk to your leadership, right? If you're not the top leader, but you're kind of in mid-level within a company, but you recognize that things could be better from a cultural transformation, go talk to your leadership, share with them what you see, and that your commitment to want to make things better, and you're willing to contribute and work toward an improvement in the overall culture, and how can we get that done? I think the starting point is through dialogue. It's in making sure that people recognize that their people are concerned for the company. It's that initial recognition about your culture within the company. It's very, very, very important. Another question, I guess. I'm not sure if I completely understand, but let me paraphrase this. People are concerned about how do you get the right people on the bus. Very, very important concept. Yes, absolutely. I think it's extremely important. We all are talking about that there's 10 million jobs out there that are unfilled in corporate America right now, and people are asking the question, how do I get these jobs filled? Well, it's painful if you fill the job with the wrong person. So despite the fact that you're under tremendous pressure to fill seats, right, to fill employee vacancies, make sure you're taking the steps to try to understand what type of person are you looking for from a cultural aspect, and asking those behavioral questions during the interview to make sure that you're really vetting the candidates that you have, and you're picking the one that's going to create that vibrant culture, that's going to help you to achieve that mission and purpose through their good character, their good values, their good beliefs in what you're doing, and making sure that they're passionate individuals. So I think that yes, it's a big challenge for companies. In many cases, job hirings are always squeezed a little bit by leadership, or trying to get more out of the existing workforce before they bring on more expense. I get that, but when you are hiring somebody, make sure that you're vetting them for cultural, as well as their skills, their hard skills in doing the job. That's what's one thing, but make sure that they have the soft skills as well, and the right values and character. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, let's see. I appreciate everyone's time today. Again, this was my 10th webinar for the year. Look forward to 2 more before the end of the year. We'll have one in mid-November and another one in December, and different topics. One on leadership specifically. They all touch a little bit on culture, but I wanted to talk about leadership skills that are critical for the new era, for the new and next normal, but also how leadership coaching can help you. So look forward to those next webinars, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Thank you. Thank you so much.